Growing up, one of the things that I wanted most out of life was to be a wife and a mom. My husband and I got married when I was young. I was 18 when we got married. And we didn't want to plan a family right away just because of being so young. And we had a joke going on that we were on a 5-year plan. People would ask us when we were going to have a family, and we would kid around and just say we were on a 5-year plan. We wanted to travel. We wanted to do some things around the house. We wanted to just experience each other before we started a family of our own. Just before our 5th anniversary, we found out that we were expecting our first baby, and it was a pretty uneventful pregnancy. The pregnancy went very well, went very smooth, and according to us, our life was going the way we planned it. We were both believers, and God was very important in our life, but we were in control of our life more than God was in control of our life. Things were going very well. But 1 month before my due date, we were at one of our childbirth instructing classes. And that evening, the instructor was actually somebody that we knew. And I went up to her because there were some things that had happened throughout the day that kind of concerned me. And so I asked her what she thought. And at that point, she wanted me to call the doctor right then and there. So we called the doctor from that room, and they wanted us to come to the hospital so they could run a couple tests. Kathy went over to the hospital with us. I don't remember what she prayed, but I remember her praying with us in the elevator on the way up to the maternity ward. At that point, I knew in my heart that something would change drastically. And when we met the doctor at the hospital, they ran a couple different tests, and at that point we found out that the baby's heart had stopped and that the baby had died. We went home that night and came back to the hospital the next morning, just in shock and not knowing why this was happening. This isn't the way it was supposed to happen. This was not the way we planned it. But one thing that I do remember very clearly that day, one of our family doctors, he said to us, "Guys, I don't know what to say. There are no words for what has just happened. But all I can say is that God is sovereign." And that would be the start of my journey in understanding and learning about God's true sovereignty. At this point, we were pretty devastated as to what was happening, and we didn't understand how this was happening. This wasn't part of our plan, but we would soon find out that this was part of God's plan. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths." That following year was a challenge. Trying to understand God's plan for our life and wondering when we would be able to start a family. That year was a learning curve with my faith with God, and I would give it over to Him, and then I would take it back, and then I would give it over to Him, and then I would take it back. At the end of the first year, we found out that we were expecting another baby. And just a week later, I miscarried that baby. At that point, I was devastated. Didn't really understand why this was happening. It was as if God just reached down and said to me, "Do not be discouraged. I love you. I am with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you." And at that point on, I had a peace that knowing that God was in control of our life. And 3 weeks later, believe it or not, we found out we were expecting our oldest child, Courtney. And then 3 years after that, we had Allie, and 3 years after that, we had Nicole. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, during those pregnancies, I was at peace. I didn't worry. People often ask me, I bet you were scared to death and constantly wondering. I wasn't. I knew God was in control, and I knew at that point that He had a plan for our life and that He was in control. Our son's name is Sean. His name means God is gracious. Exodus 34:6 says, "The Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in goodness and truth. He has been, is, and will be all of that and more." My name is Ann Wirtz, and this is my story on how I let God take control.